You're watching Diecast Breakdown with Chuck Ellis, David Johns, and Mark McHotwheel. So sit back, strap in, and hang on. The breakdown starts now.
Hey there folks, Chuck here. Welcome to Diecast Breakdown. I am super excited that you're here today, and I want to give a special shout out to our patrons, especially our executive producer level patrons. That would be First and 64th Customs, Video Geek Productions, Donald Raschick, and of course, Mr. Twice Diecast and his fabulous YouTube channel. Thank you so much, David. And speaking of David, I am joined by my co-hosts, Mr. David Johns.
We'll do it one more time, Chuck.
All right. And Mr. Mark McHotwheel.
How's it going, everybody?
And we have got a special show today because we are not talking specifically about someone that has been working with the Diecast brands that we know and love, but this is a tangential thing that I think a lot of us need to be made more aware of, because if you've customized diecasts for any more than 5 minutes, you have heard about Mad Max style, post-apocalyptic style, and dare I say it, Gaslands is a very popular term. But did you know that there are other games out there that follow a post-apocalyptic theme and operate in a 1/64 scale where you can use your customized diecasts in the game? And that's where our guests come in today. We are going to be talking to some wonderful gents from Steve Jackson Games, which is home to the Car Wars game, which has been around for quite a while. And we're going to get into all that because it's got a fascinating history. But first, I want to introduce our guests, Randy Scheunemann, who is a game developer over at Steve Jackson Games. Thank you for being here, Randy.
Thanks for having me.
And Jimmie Bragdon, who is their IT manager and does a lot of the really cool demos and stuff that you'll see on the Steve Jackson YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us, Jimmie.
Thanks a lot. It's good to be here.
So, gents, again, I'm really excited about this because as somebody who's collected these cars for years and has done customizations, I'm always looking for new ways to enjoy our hobby. And while Car Wars isn't exactly new, it is something that I think should be brought into the realm of awareness more with our hobbies. Randy, tell me a little bit about Car Wars and where all that started from.
Car Wars itself was designed and developed by Steve Jackson himself many years ago. I want to say it was around 83. There's been many editions over the years. The most recent is Car Wars 6th edition that Sam Mitchke and I had the pleasure of co-designing with each other. That's where it lives right now. We're in Car Wars 6th edition. It came out a few years ago. It's what people remember playing 10, 15, 20 years ago. But you remember things with rose-colored glasses. Your memory is like that. So we've tried to bring that into what we're doing. People who played it with us will say, this is how I remember. And I'll have to explain it is. But if you really think about what you were doing back then, it was a little different.
Car Wars originally wasn't a 1/64th scale game. And that didn't really kind of happen until significantly after Car Wars came along. So what made it great and why it was changed?
It's a different era. What made it great was it was one of the first, if not the first, of that post-apocalyptic car war, like you slapping guns on a car and driving around. And it was right at that era of Mad Max, like the Mad Max movie coming out. So there was this hunger for that type of engagement with something. And there was some satisfaction with, okay, we're playing Car Wars. It is us driving around, and it isn't all wasteland either. It is the far future. So there is some stylish cars as well. But a lot of people remember the wasteland-esque cars when they do it.
Yeah, when it came out, it was sort of the era of like hex and chit games. So a lot of very tactical games where you use very small pieces of cardboard or cut them out yourself and moved around pre-done maps and everything. And a lot of those were like military games or tank games. And so Steve was one of the early ones who started to move it into another genre with, cars on arena tracks or out in the wasteland and that sort of thing. But original scale, I think, was roughly an inch for the cars or somewhere around there. And it was a piece of cardboard, laying flat top down on the car. And that was kind of the era of games that it originally came out in.
1D.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, very much. Yeah.
It reminds me, the way you describe it reminds me a bit about that, like the game BattleTech, which I played a little bit in the late 80s and early 90s. That was kind of a similar thing. That was a lot of cardboard and a lot of hex shaped pieces. But for people who have not really played a game like Car Wars before, there's a lot of terms out there: tabletop games, RPG. What kind of category does a game like Car Wars fall into, and what is a good way to explain that to somebody who's never played a game like this before?
I consider it a tabletop game. Tabletop can encompass almost anything. It really means just what the words say. We are sitting around a table and playing it. It can be a board game. It could be a dice game. It could be miniatures, everything from Monopoly to like almost Lego, like little Lego games. I would also call it a miniatures game crossed with a board game. It doesn't have a set board, but a lot of what we're doing is very board game. There's a lot of board game pieces in it. Elements, I should say. So it is a miniatures game crossed with a board game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd put it just edging into the miniatures territory, because a lot of when you think of miniatures games, you think a lot of times of the guys with the hundreds of Warhammer models out on the table or things like that. And this is where you have the customization of your unit and that sort of thing that you get in a lot of those style of games. Like you have to build and create the piece you're going to play with and how it's designed, but you just have the one. Everyone has their one car. So I think it's a board game just edging into the miniature space for me.
Be back with more Diecast Breakdown after this word from our sponsors. The day of giving has come and gone, but the Diecast season of giving continues. We're halfway to reaching our goal of donating 20,000 cars around the world to kids in need. All you need are brand new and packaged Diecast cars and a local charity of your choosing to join in. Help us put smiles on the faces that need it most. Learn how you can join in and submit your donation to be counted at drivendreams.org. Let's end the year strong.
Hey everybody, this is Jovita from the SRT Jovita Show, and you are watching Diecast Breakdown.
Here's this week's small channel shout-out.
Deadly Spiders Diecast.
If you have a favorite Diecast channel with less than 700 subscribers and you'd like to see them highlighted on a future episode, email us at diecastbreakdown@gmail.com. The Diecast Media Network store is here. Wear your passion with pride, featuring designs from Diecast Breakdown, Flying Valiant builds, plus unique designs inspired by diecast culture from Justin Ellis. Visit tpublic.com/Diecast Media Network now.
Hey, this is Chad Reed from Round 2, and you're watching Diecast Breakdown.
And now back to Diecast Breakdown.
Guys, in this day and age, especially coming out of COVID, I would imagine we saw the growth of tabletop and RPGs just shoot through the roof. We all... I guess more when we were able to get together again, but the industry is as popular as it's ever been. Am I correct in saying that? Based on my research, we owe a lot to, I guess, some of the shows like Stranger Things kind of really showed the good part of getting together and playing some D&D on Friday night, and Critical Role on YouTube is really fun to watch. What do you guys attribute, from your perspective and your experience, in the growth of this type of game in this industry?
So nothing is one dimensional. There's no like one defining piece to the vast majority of anything. Like, why is this popular? Why is this working?
Yeah.
For us, I think part of what it is for hobby gaming was the internet. The internet itself and the ease of everyone to access that information. I say everyone, the vast majority of people you meet are able to get on the internet and connect with anyone they want who's also on the internet. And that's a large population on Earth. These groups before then were restricted to, you had to know it existed. You had to know where to go. If you were going to go to Gen Con, you had to know Gen Con even existed, where it was. So you were kind of already in the industry periphery. So your older brother, or your dad, or your mom, or whoever was saying, I go to this thing, and then you join in as kind of a familial thing. After the internet, when you were over at a friend's house and you said, oh, we played this fun game, you could go look up other games. So that was kind of the seed for it to spread. When you add in Kickstarter, which allowed a lot more variety in who was making games, instead of 50 or 100 big companies, let's say, it's everybody. Anybody could make a game and put it out there on Kickstarter. So that wide variety of people introducing new ideas into the market helped. New art styles, Photoshop, just the ability for someone to get a hold of Photoshop. Things looked better and more enticing to people, and that's easier to sell. Add in social media. Hey, I'm talking to my friends about this thing. Add in YouTube, where you're watching now people play these games. You're like, oh, it's like a commercial for it. Throw in a dash of, this stuff's been around for 20, 30, 40 years now. Those who were this tall then have just become adults with this stuff.
Yep.
And so now, like, oh, now I've got it. I'm here, and it's going to be actors, singers. We've talked to people from bands, major record labels. Where I'm like, what? Who? Major actors who are like, can we come down and look and see this? Like, there's nothing that goes on here. Like, there's nothing to see. Right. Yes. Come down. All of those pieces plus many more have just like broadened it out. And then it gets in the eyes of big box stores. And once it's in a big box store on their shelves, grandma's finding it. Somebody who doesn't know is picking it up. Like, it just, and that's where the explosion point, like, boom, it's everywhere then.
Yeah, I think a lot of it in the last 10 years or so can be attributed to there's a lot more end user generated content on the internet now, podcasts, videos, YouTube, all that stuff that wasn't really possible before these platforms came around. And so it was a lot of, you could get advertised to by what somebody wanted to put out as a commercial or a press release or something like that. But you wouldn't have things like the show or a Critical Role or a board game review channel. That's just something you can like pull up every day and see what's going on right now. Nearly as much as you have been able to in the last decade. So I think that's been a great help in people discovering more of these things. The more discoverable stuff is, the easier it is to find smaller titles and get them picked up to wider distribution, that sort of thing. And then for our industry specifically, when things like COVID hit and everyone's staying home, like no one's going out to a movie theater or this or the other thing. Hey, look, if we can spend $50, $60, the price of going to the movies for the weekend and have something that we can play every other week, every other weekend or so at home and get a lot of use out of that. That's something we can do while we're cooped up here. And, brother and sister and the kids are on everybody's nerves. Like, hey, look, here's a thing we could all do. Let's do this and be occupied and have do something together that's not just watching another movie, on Netflix. Yep. So I think that also, in general, the hobby games industry, that sort of thing helped for the people who, had their own built-in, I live with several people. Didn't help so much for the people who live by themselves or anything, but I think we did see a bit of, people were looking for things to do and found a lot of them in hobby games, role-playing games, board games, miniatures games, that sort of thing. You get time to sit home and kit bash and paint and that sort of stuff and all those things. Paint the armies that tons of plastic you got sitting over on the shelf that you've ever gotten to for years.
Yep.
Well, in the '08 financial crisis, I traveled the country during that period, going to game stores and talking to them. We had, as an industry, a big boom period there too, because when the dollar got tight, families again weren't going out to the movie. Like, where can our $40 go? And they would buy a game, and you're back into that era of I've got this one thing and we need to get our money's worth out of it. And shop owners, because things were closing, those game store shops, one of the hobby stores in general, want a big piece of space, whether you're a painting store or a miniature store or just a board game store. You want community, and having space allowed the community to be there and the community to grow. That it's almost like when things are going bad, economically or societally, it is one of those things that people fall back on. Like, it's a connection to community and a connection to family, however you define it.
You mean we have to actually interact with other people?
I have said fistfights are a form of player interaction. It is true. And there is something to be said. Like, I love a good video game, but sitting across from someone and everyone knowing that if I am just a total jerk, there could be physical repercussions for it. Like, that just reins some people in. You get
David,
less
you can't
of
play
that.
this game.
No, that's no. I'm staying on Twitter so I can throw my grenades.
There you go.
But we have thermite grenades.
You have thermite grenades.
So for somebody that's like I'd never really, besides like hearing about some stuff from Chuck, because Chuck loves this stuff. Let's be real.
I'm the nerd of the group. Yeah.
He's, the biggest nerd.
Culture.
But not just the nerd.
Yeah.
But
I am a nerd on multiple fronts.
If you were to buy this game, what is the typical length of the game, like when you're playing like with your friends or family, like to get from start to finish, and what does start to finish look like? With the game.
A 2-player game of Car Wars, 6th edition. It's going to run about a half hour per player. So you're going to have about an hour. That can go long or it can go very short. Because at its core, it's an elimination game. But if you are the type to agonize over, I'm going to build this car just perfectly and go through these, like, that portion of the game can take quite a while. If you already have built cars and you're not doing that and you know how to play, there's a point scale. You get to choose how much stuff is on your car. If you put a lot of stuff on a car, the game is going to go longer. But if you have a medium to small car, the game is going to go shorter. It's going to stay within that half-hour range. That was one of the complaints we tried to address when we were redesigning the new edition. The complaints were, it takes forever. Like, one turn goes this far. I don't even know how long it ended. We played the same game over 6 weekends. We can't have that sort of thing. It's not going to sell. So, it's not going to be fun for people. There's going to be no engagement for it.
Yeah. So
we wanted to it's got to go faster. It's got to be doable in an hour. Maybe it goes long and you're at an hour and a half. It's that sort of time limit. We've done videos on the Steve Jackson Game YouTube channel. Those are pretty much the game length. They cut them down a little bit because that's what you have to do for editing. But it wasn't for game length. It was for, like, we were talking about other things.
The stuff you do when you play.
The answer to your question is about an hour.
Yeah.
If you're playing with 4 people, it's going to be about 2 hours.
Like a typical game will start off with everyone. If you're not using the pre-designed cars that we give you like a half dozen of each scale of pre-designed cars in the box. But if you're not using those, you're building your own from scratch. We generally tell people take 10 to 20 minutes to build your card. You've got each player's got their own deck of cards. They're all the same. So if we put a flamethrower in one set, there's 4 of them, one for each player. And you say, all right, this is going to play 24-point game today. You got 24 points of stuff you can put on your car. All the cards have a point value on them. So you say 10, 15 minutes. Bill, I'm looking at you. Really 15 minutes. We're timing you this time. And you build that around your dashboard. And then once everybody's built, you say, all right, let's go. Let's start driving. And most of the time, like again, unless you're just the kind of people who are going to agonize over every single choice, you can get that early part done in about 15 minutes or so. Especially if you've played the game once or twice, you understand the mechanics. Oh, that thing says I can get rerolls on here. So, but I need these tokens. So I'm going to take this spoiler that gives me extra of those tokens every round. And you'll see a couple pieces that go together better and build a car out of that. And the gameplay is, the standard gameplay loop is there's a couple beginning of the round checks, and then, you move, and then you shoot, end of the round bookkeeping, go to the next round. And most games will go, I would say a short game would be 3 to 4 rounds, and a long game might go like 8 rounds or so. And again, those are going to depend on how many players are in a round and everything like that. But based on like the ones we run on stream, we can get most of them done. I generally plan out about an hour and a half for our stream games, just because we have some intro and outro and things like that. And we do extra explaining during them so that people can follow along if they're new to the game and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And you pause during the fights and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
we'll pause.
Randy starts throwing hands.
Thankfully, I've never had to get that far. There's frustration.
Usually with the dice.
Don't always love all of us.
Dice don't like Randy.
You get hit in the eye.
Good to know.
I understand that. There's a
eye patch.
We had a D&D group, and there was a set of cursed dice that everybody just avoided that dice. And I was like, I'm going to break the curse of the dice. And I did not break the curse of the dice.
No.
So, I don't know how that shook out, but it was like this D20 refused to roll anything over an 11.
And it's so frustrating.
Right?
And there's probably a mathematician inside of you who just knows, I know this isn't real.
Weighted dice.
But why is it always happening? Anyway, but it's real. It's totally real.
Ocean's 11.
So the thing that I've noticed, it's interesting again, because there's actually been in this category at least 3 that I'm aware of different games. Car Wars was the first in the 80s. Then there was Games Workshop had one called Dark Future that came out in 88. That was the first one. So it was Car Wars was first, but the first 1/64 scale one was Dark Future in 88. That really started incorporating. It came with its own cars. They were plastic, but they were 3-inch cars. They were roughly 1/64 scale. Then Car Wars kind of updated their game in 2002 to make it also a 3-inch car game, so that the diecast crowd could join in, and it kind of came and went. And then this Mike Hutchinson guy comes along a few years ago and comes up with Gaslands, which it seems much more heavily based on building the miniatures and building like a very complex team. So what I've seen from the videos, and what I like about Car Wars is what you said, is that Gaslands looks like a great opportunity for somebody who wants to spend like a ton of time building an entire fleet of vehicles and coming up with complex backstories. And there's all these teams that you can be on and all these alignments and this and that. And Car Wars, like, it feels like there's some lore. There can be some role playing to it as well, but it doesn't have to have that. So with that in mind, like, there's always a backstory to these games. So what is the backstory, the lore of Car Wars, and how deep could somebody go if they really wanted to go down that rabbit trail?
So there was, in the past, there was a lot of lore. They actually did a whole, like GURPS expansion or Car Warriors expansion. There was a whole role-playing game set in the Car Wars universe. We pulled the core timeline of a lot of that universe with a few tweaks forward for this edition. But basically right now, where the system is at the moment is, there's a chronology, a couple of pages in the rule book in the intro that go over like the general timeline of the world to give you an idea of the setting. but that's where like your base sets kind of leave off.
Okay.
We do have a scenario book that just came out that has more settings and more little story bits that go with, the scenario here, that scenario there, and a ways to do sort of like maybe continued campaign options. And we've also got a series of fiction novels being written in the updated universe. And they're pulling some stuff from the old universe and writing some new things with that as well.
So the story-wise, it takes place, it could be anywhere on Earth, but the main story takes place in the United States after the supervolcano has erupted.
Okay.
So the hot springs in which national park is it?
Yellowstone.
Yellowstone. So the Yellowstone supervolcano has erupted, and it has broken down society. It is, I want to say, 100 or a couple hundred years from now.
No, it's not. It's the original, the beginning of the chronology, and the new one is 2035.
Is it 2035 only?
Well, that's where like the original event, like the game itself happens at like 2065 or so. So like, but like there's like about 30 years of events leading up to what made the current modern day. Because there's like a follow-on grain blight that happens, and some states separate out into the free oil states, and so there's about 30 years of timeline that we throw out there to get to where today in Car Wars is, which is like I think 2065 or.
I know that when we did the new edition, they shifted the years up because it was kind of like, well, this has almost already happened. So
I think they had to add 50 to everything.
Yeah,
basically.
I think they added 50 to everything.
Sure. Yeah, I think the original Dark Futures game was set in the distant future of 1997 or something. So you got to keep up with the times on those.
We're at the 6th edition. Congratulations. That's pretty remarkable. And not a lot of people can say that. From a high altitude perspective, what does the success of the 6th edition look like to you guys? What would that, I guess, look like to you as a company?
I have done a lot to try not to focus on that sort of thing. It really gets me down because it will never be enough. If they said half the world is playing it, I'd be like,
what's wrong with the other half?
Isn't playing my game, right? And it's, I would probably feel good, but like, how did we have this rampant success? But, it's not a huge number.
Mm-hmm.
So the Kickstarter we did for 6th edition pulled just about 4,000 backers for that Kickstarter project. So that's how many we basically had in before it hit the ground. So we presume it's gone up since there. We have sold stuff out past the project. I don't have any numbers beyond that. Yeah. But we showed off at every convention we go to. We teach Rainiac, taught a lot of people. A lot of people would come, I remember this, and remember something like this. Let us show it to you.
And our timing didn't work out phenomenally because the Kickstarter ended and it released just about the time for the pandemic to start.
It closed the Kickstarter in December of 2019.
Of all the tabletop gaming you can do online, miniature style gaming is not realistically one of them you can accomplish easily. Mm-hmm. So you could buy it and you're like, I'm waiting for the end of the pandemic. But people weren't really doing that. And I couldn't go promote it. We can't go out and show it to people and play with people.
Well, and we had delays even producing it because the factories weren't open. And the whole thing, we had a really big high on it was coming back. And then this kind of
we're doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
The world is shutting down.
Hurry up and wait. Yeah.
Obviously, like some of the things that would be success to us is needing to reprint it some more. Being able to go ahead and say, oh, well, we definitely see enough interest. Here's other things or new campaigns or more stories about it or programs that play out in the stores. Like you say, those weekly things where you see people playing it every week in their store or on their channel or something like that. Those are all ways that we could see success in the game.
That'd be my real life benchmark. Walk into a store and see it being played on a table where I didn't prompt it.
Yep.
Because I travel around the country sometimes and stop in at stores for work. And if I were to go into a store and see people like playing it, that would be that like next step of, okay, it's doing at least well enough for this.
Have you guys thought about maybe a different type of con, like a diecast convention, to kind of encourage that crossover?
Would love to. I will go to nearly every convention that they will allow me to go to. Conventions, trade shows, stuff like that. I adore them.
Sure.
So I would love to. We've gone to some miniatures ones. We've gone to we've been to New York Toy Fair. We've been to like Adepticon. We've gone to obviously Gen Con. PAX Unplugged will be coming up here the start of December. Yep. Any show I can go. I don't get to schedule them, but if I were to see the opportunity, especially if it's low cost for the company, because it's outside of the normal things we do. So when you're doing that sort of thing, it's that cost benefit ratio, because it's still, at its heart, it's still a company.
Sure.
So I got to convince somebody to do it.
Well, it's intriguing to me because I could see something like this because it's relatively easy to set up, doing very well at a show like Diecast SuperCon in Las Vegas, where we have everything from custom diecasts on display, where you will, I guarantee you, find post-apocalyptic cars.
Yep.
To people doing downhill races. We just had a guy on that does a series called Junkyard Joust, and it's just like riding his toy cars down the track, and they crash, and they do that, and people have taken that and turned it into their own game that they play at home. And we're talking about doing those kind of games at cons, and they do downhill races at cons. And so you'd have this audience that we've got a whole bunch of toy cars. What are we doing with them? Let's find something to do with them. You go, hey kid, you want to do something cool with your car? Yeah, I'll come into this back alley. I'll show you what you can do with anyway. But don't do that.
That is one thing that there is crossover, because while we do have models that ship with the game, the models that we use in the game are just representative. They don't have to like it's not like some miniature games where, if you put a long rifle on that guy, he better be carrying a long rifle, sort of thing. These are just styles, so you can kit bash and put whatever you want on the game base, and it works in the game. So that's why people can bring their Gaslands cars, their own custom cars and stuff, and show them off in the course of the game.
And for anyone who's curious about actually, like, how would I actually do it? We built the bases. Sam Mitchke, when we designed the bases, he made two different holes on the base. So they have two little like pillars on the car base, and you would ostensibly drill two holes in the bottom of the car, and then it will rest on the base and it won't slide off. So it better not be your prized whatever.
Yeah.
If it's that, you're going to need to design some other method for it to stay on the base.
What a lot of fans have done is they've clipped those pegs and used sticky tack or something to put their models onto the base instead.
I was going to say, there's poster putty or something that you could do if you needed
to. Yeah. And we had a thought towards the painters and the kit bashers and all of that out there. You really only need the vehicle to be smaller than the base, so the base is protected from because you run into other cars. So I don't want your sweet paint job to get rubbed off or broken off with rubbing against somebody else's wrecked up car. So as long as it's inside the base, you're good.
Don't touch that dial. Diecast Breakdown will be right back after these messages.
This episode of Diecast Breakdown is brought to you by you. That's right. We are 100% viewer and listener supported, and we are so grateful for those of you who have already supported the podcast and the shows we're planning to add to the Diecast Media Network family. You can find out more about how to support this project by visiting diecastmedianetwork.com or email us about sponsoring an episode at diecastbreakdown@gmail.com.
Hello, this is Diecast Dude from the Netherlands, and you are watching Diecast Breakdown.
This presentation of Diecast Breakdown is brought to you by Twice Diecast and Dots and Man Diecast on YouTube. Please visit their links in the show notes and subscribe to their channels for more epic Diecast content.
Hey, this is Champion DJK, and you're watching Diecast Breakdown.
And now, the thrilling conclusion of this week's episode of Diecast Breakdown.
There's just so many guys in our diecast community. Like, that is the just the mood that they are in with customizing right now. I mean, this would have to appeal to a lot of you, and I'm talking to our viewers right now. A lot of you guys, this would really appeal to you.
I thought you were talking to somebody else's viewers.
No, the world. I'm talking to the world right now. No, guys, like, so many of our collectors in our community, this is what they go crazy over, is the idea of doing these Gasland type models.
Post-apocalyptic type vehicles.
Pardon me. Post-apocalyptic type models. Chuck included. He is yes, a master at making these. So I think this is something a lot of people in the diecast community could really get behind. But it's a pretty big jump. Sometimes you have to have a little gateway. There's let's all be fair. There's a stigma when you say D&D, and people aren't going to immediately say, yeah, I'll give that a try. But if you introduce Car Wars, man, I think I can give that a try and try that with my son
Star
who goes,
Wars.
who goes with me to, my son goes with me to diecast conventions on the weekend. We're going to sit down and we're going to play a game. We're going to turn off the TV. We're going to turn off our devices. We're going to talk to each other and we're going to interact. So I think you guys, might be onto something here is what I'm trying to say.
It 100% is that, like, get together and do stuff. And if you've been taking your diecast and finding new diecast or odd, weird stuff or kit bashing it or whatever, and you're staring at it going, well, I want to do something more with it. I want to spend more time with this thing than just the time I spend painting it and the time it sits on a shelf. What can I do with it? Using it in a game like Car Wars or Gaslands or some other game is a wonderful way to experience it and even take it out and show it off. Because if you're playing with somebody else, they get to see what you've done. You get to appreciate it. And it may generate ideas for what you want to do with the next maybe little diecast piece of art you're doing. Well, I'm going to look for one that was rusted out, so nobody ever wanted it anyway. And I'm going to take that one and it's kind of crushed up. And then I'll really modify it to be post-apocalyptic or whatever. Haven't gone that far yet. Let's go.
And one more thing I'll add on, and then I'll shut up here, but I'm kind of flowing here. A lot of times when we have these customizers who talk about their builds, it's not necessarily the execution of all the work they put into their car, but it's the story of why they made that car and the memories attached to it. Chuck talks about this all the time, but to have that memory attached to a build that somebody has on their shelf as, yeah, this was my Car Wars, victory car. Yeah, that would be really appealing to folks in the community.
We spoke about cursed dice. I mean, you could have the lucky kit car that you ran or the unlucky one where you're like, that one doesn't win, so I don't play it anymore. Yeah. He's up there retired.
David brought up an important point. Like, D&D is a great and really fun game, but it takes a lot of time to set up stuff like that and to have stuff like I've played that, and then there's games like Catan where you can just take it off the shelf and you go and you just set up and you're ready to go in like 10 minutes. But to have something that kind of bridges that gap that incorporates a lot of customization and free play, but it is also still something that somebody can watch one of Jimmie's videos, one of his streams or something, and pick up the rules and follow it and actually be up and running. And like Jimmie, you said in this last video, at some point that somebody said something like, well, we'll just learn as we're playing. Like this is a game that it's not like D&D is something you can learn as you're playing, but there's still there is so much setup that goes into rolling up a character. And I know they've come up with ways to streamline that, and you've done that as well with pre-made cars and stuff. But to really sit down and playing out a D&D character, you're spending the first 4 hours of your campaign just getting all that stuff set up, especially if you're starting from scratch. But
and we shortcut things, and it's always faster to learn from someone who can teach you rather than straight from a book. But
sure,
this game, there's what I tried to do at the beginning of the last one that you saw, the one we just did, was I went over the basics of moving, the basics of shooting, and said, there's some other details, but we'll get to them as we get there. But when we do, we do convention demos all the time, and we'll have people like, oh, how does this new version work? And we have, Randy and I think we've got about a 3-turn demo that we can do. Takes about 20 minutes because it's one car, and they've all got the same car. It takes about 20 minutes. We'll walk them through the first turn, like step by step. We'll kind of guide them to the second turn. They can pretty much play the third turn by themselves. You're like, cool, 80% of what you need to play the game now. And you're going to have to check the rule book most of the time. It's really been streamlined over the old editions where it was a lot more of an investment in figuring out, because you had to balance a whole lot more pieces when you were trying to build your car and a whole lot more movement rules and everything like that. So part of what the sixth edition did was try to compress that learning curve and everything else to get you on the table faster and get you playing the game faster.
And when you talk about Dungeons and Dragons or any role-playing game, there's a lot of literature with it. Even a core rulebook is usually like a couple hundred pages. The Car Wars rulebook is, I think, 24 pages. I could be wrong about that.
It's 24.
It's big pictures, like a lot of some of that page is story. Some of it is like it counts the back page in the cover. I mean, so
yeah,
it's large diagrams. It's as easy to understand as we could. And it's not a huge book to read. So you can learn it.
Even Mark could learn it.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, you like the pictures.
I like picture books.
That's true.
Definitely.
So the thing that I'm curious about, because of the way Car Wars has existed, so the game starts in 1983. It's this one thing. 20 years go by, give or take. It gets redone in the 5th edition. There's something happens between the 1st and 5th edition. There's this big revamp of it, and we talked about this a little bit off camera. But the first one it comes out in 2002 ish. Doesn't do so well. Then there's like radio silence, almost like it seems this way anyway from the research I did. There's like this weird gap between 2002 and like 2018-19 or whatever when the Kickstarter comes out. So what was going on behind the scenes during that time, and what led to Steve Jackson going, hey, this is something that we think is worth revisiting?
So Sam Mitchke and I were working there for a lot of that time. I started at the company in 2005. It wasn't that many years after that, I think, before he was on board. But repeatedly over the course of years, we were talking about it and doing design and development work on it. But Munchkin existed for the company, and there was always another project that got in front of it. We're going to design this other game. We're going to do this other thing. Or we're going to have this person design it. We weren't directly attached to Car Wars design from the start, but we kept like adding in. And it wasn't until the later years, 2015, probably, when they said, okay, you two, you're going to do this project. You're going to do it. I left the company for 1 year for 2011. I wasn't with the company. I was out in Seattle. We were working on it before I left the company. We were talking about it, having meetings, doing design and development work. We were working on it. My son is 11 now. We were working on it before he was born. Mm-hmm. There was always something got in the way, or we wanted to change something. And we hadn't announced anything. So there wasn't an emergency to like, nope, we have said this date. We had other projects. We had things bringing in cash. And while we wanted to do the next one, it wasn't ready. And a game is late until it comes out. But if you put out a piece of garbage, it's garbage forever. You put out something nobody wants. So we wanted to do it right as well.
And that's also sort of the nature of being a company with some longevity in the industry, is that we have our hits from over the years, Car Wars, Illuminati, GURPS, And some of those will sit for many years before there's enough demand to, hey, whatever happened to that? Or it's just the era of gaming has changed so that the style of game it wasn't originally isn't really popular, but the concept of the game might work in a new style or a new presentation sort of thing. So we do have those games that will come back cyclically every decade or two, just because we've been around that long. And then there's some that are constant, like Munchkin keeps getting expansions. And a lot of times when stuff slows down on a particular title, the thing to do is, okay, demand for that is kind of low. There's not really anything there. So you kind of let it sit and keep it in your mind. And when you say something comes along, you're like, hey, this new type of game, would do really well in that style, this thing. And then you start trying to wed those and bring them back out. Or sometimes it's just a matter of, well, it's set for long enough and people are asking for it enough now. We're hearing a lot of discussion about these types of games being popular again. Maybe it's time to bring that one back out of the archives, update it a little bit, and put another one out. So we've got, and combine that with the fact that we're a small company and we can only work on so many at a time. We can't keep all the big lines running all the time. We just don't have that many people.
What do you guys like about Car Wars?
I like that it is it has this very tactical element to it. Get out there. The positioning of everything is important. And a lot of times, it's also unpredictable in its nature. So you can hope for the best when you plan out a move for a turn. And sometimes the dice will throw that off, and sometimes the other players will go somewhere you didn't expect them to be at all, and suddenly you've got to pull a U-turn and spin out and send yourself halfway across the arena for it. That element of tactical positioning and those little elements of chaos make for a really fun experience for me. Because you're trying to outthink the other guys, but also gamble against those dice and plan each turn like, all right, if he's going there for that, if I can come around this obstacle and get him here, and then suddenly you run there first, he blows the gun off your side of your car, and suddenly you got to rethink everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like that kind of very positional, tactical, and chaotic feel is what I like about it.
I have multiple layers of what I like. Because we worked on it so long, and I remember the years of Sam and I arguing about it and trying to tweak the just, no, this should be like this. It should be just a little more, or that's too much, or all the play testing and everything. I have a fond memory of the process. So when I look at the game, that's connected to it. As far as playing, I love the different ways different people interact with it. Well, I'm going to build this car. I'm going to try to do this. Or someone who gets really deep, but they have a binder of their car builds. And they're like, oh, you're getting a number 4 today. And you're like, what is like, oh no, he's built this. He's got the cards all laid out and ready to pick. He's got a list. And then the art of it, it is Mad Maxy. It is this future car dueling thing, whether it be a Spy Hunter look or a Mad Max look, because they both exist in this universe. You do get to see this, and it's something that I helped create. I touched other people. Anytime I see someone enjoying it, I'm like, that's it. Yeah, that's even if they're enjoying it while they're losing, because I'm pretty good at it.
They're losing.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Shots fired.
Well, felt. Shout out for the Spy Hunter reference. Have not heard that in at least 20 years.
Steve's original concepts, a lot of them were the guns are hidden. You don't see the guns, because if you saw the guns, you just shoot them off. That's a wonderful thing, but it can be hard for a fan to grasp. Like, why am I not seeing it? I want to see the thing mounted on the side. I want to see that. So there is, like, both of those do exist in the world.
Yeah, the world has kind of like your wastelands, where you get the more Mad Maxy, more slapped on with baling wire and chain link and stuff. But it also has, inside of those, there are corporate controlled or cities that are holding off the wilderness. And those places, auto dueling it's your F1, it's your NASCAR, it's a sport. And so you've got the corporate sponsored vehicles going against each other with the latest, greatest laser drones and everything else, and hidden weapon hatches that pop up during a match and that sort of thing. So there's room for both in the universe. And so especially in the sculpts of our models and the art, you can see both of those things represented.
I was just having an interesting thought during this. Like, we talked about the Hot Wheels show and they're building these cars and stuff like that. I think it'd be way cooler to see something like a giant game with one-on-one cars, one-of-one cars, like size-wise, to where
full scale.
Like there's different like full-scale cars and gosh, what if you guys got the opportunity to do something like that? Would you guys be all about that, or would you be like, I don't know?
Wow, you'd need
insurance.
I love come on.
Yeah.
I think
my brain is a logistical thing, right? So part of what I try to do is never say no. What would you need? Because you've got to have the space to do it. So let's say you're in a football arena. It's off season or whatever, or it's being torn down, whatnot. Because you got to be able to see it to enjoy it. To move the car like you're going to have to move it, it wouldn't be able to be a real car, but you could do it real sized, and you could theoretically I made this thing, and you could theoretically move it and have it work. Because you have to measure out where it goes, but you'd have a whole team of people laying down
crane. Like with a crane and then like move it with a crane.
Because if it was just a shell, if it wasn't the guts of the car, you could make it lighter. You could make it a fiberglass body, something that was relatively light, and you could move it around. It would be a really interesting thing to see. And then you I guess fire squibs or whatever. You're like, did you get it? So we'll see. And then Jumbotron has the dice roll or whatever.
Or an actual I'm thinking like an actual giant dice.
A giant.
That you just rolled. It rolls
it would be.
They got those soccer games where they got the giant soccer balls and they've got 6 cars on either side. They could that kind of thing.
It would be
surreal.
Yeah, that's edition 7 there. That's the Diecast breakdown edition of the game.
And we almost didn't even do it in this size.
Mark's got a jacked up 71 Datsun 510 wagon he could put in it. It's 4x4.
It doesn't have an engine in it yet, so why not?
Yeah, perfect.
Pick it up.
So
we almost did it in a different scale. It almost came out in HO scale if you train people.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
But it came to a point where we looked at it and it was real close to being done.
We were showing it at Gen Con at that scale the first time. Yeah.
Showing it. And Steve and Phil Reed came in and said, hey, it doesn't feel right. We want to go to an HO. We want to go to basically a die-cast scale. And Sam and I yelled at him for a little bit because it's been years. We're working on this, and last minute we knew it was the right choice. It wasn't, there was never a no, it was a how.
Yeah.
And thankfully it looks like the things we changed over worked. You wouldn't know because people don't know what happened.
I think it actually helped.
Well, now they do, so it's ruined.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Now it's,
I think one of the big things that it helped in switching from that HO scale to the diecast scale, the thing that it lost the old versions had these big city block maps they would go around in, and you can't do quite those large of a scale of maps anymore at the 1/64 scale because the maps would be huge. It won't fit on a table. But while that was lost, now matches start immediately. You take that first round, you're in shooting distance of somebody, where before it might be 2 or 3 rounds of positioning and driving and getting up to where we're about to fight.
You had to commute to your fight.
Yeah. And so while you could plan a little more, there was that intro lead in where everyone's just driving. There's not much happening except maybe some long shots. And we cut that whole part of the game out by bringing the scale up, which means it just feels faster again. You're right there. You're on each other. You're going from the word go. So I think that scale change really helped the game.
Yeah. Sounds
I
like
think so too. And again, my big point, the accessibility of it, that suddenly anybody with a Hot Wheels or Matchbox car, which is just about every house in this country,
Right.
has a game piece already in their home.
Yeah.
So, and the another thing I've you've got like everything from like the double ace big box sets, but you don't need all that to get started. You can get started with as little as a book and some information. I think it's like $35 or something if you wanted to really just get started with 2 players.
I believe so. I believe if it's you now, today, two people trying to like, I'm going to buy one set. I believe the price is around there, but you're going to like, I'm not certain about it.
I think the 2-player starter sets are at before I just say something wrong, let me just pull it up.
Okay.
We're going to go to the internet.
There were some,
Chuck does.
Just exactly.
Say it.
Yeah. If Chuck had properly prepared for this interview, he'd already know the answer to this question.
Randy should know it. Like we should sell it.
But they have actually changed the prices recently. So yeah, the 2-player intro set right now is $50. And that gets you the model, half a dozen models, and everything else. And so that'll get you a lot of what you're looking for.
Thought we had come down on price, but I could be wrong.
I think Chuck was quoting. He was quoting in euros. I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I know there was a thing going. There were some. That big kit had some component parts to it, and I think if you went through and bought just some of the component parts to it, you could get enough to play a game for less than one of the starter kits. I don't know if we have full stock of all those individual extra, because those are like extra component parts that we had people for, you want replacement pieces and stuff. I think some of the internet things that went around for a bit on like, oh, get started for as low as this, where people go, oh, if you go here and buy just these replacement kit pieces, you can cobble together a set.
Yeah, that's probably where I got it from. I probably got it from one of the YouTube channels that talks about it. And that's something that I think it must feel very rewarding to you, Randy, is that every video I've looked up on Car Wars 6th edition has had overall a strongly positive review of it, which was surprising. Not surprising that it would be successful for you, but because of what I knew historically of 5th edition having this very mixed review to it. And I know that there were a lot of extenuating circumstances to that. So that's got to feel pretty gratifying to have people not just saying, oh, well, this is the nostalgia of Car Wars is great, but the thing that I keep seeing over and over again and the stuff that I've seen with like Jimmie and his videos is that people who will even say, well, I'm not a car person or I'm not a Mad Max person are enjoying this game. You've made something that was relatively complex and could be daunting to someone very accessible. So how does that feel for you when you see videos like that?
It was our goal. I try to avoid those videos because I take the information they say to heart, and there's always the chance that I'm going to come across one that they're just like, don't know what they're talking about and just destroy what my hopes and dreams on it. But also you got to keep working on it. But hearing about those videos, seeing people, like meeting people who played it, teaching it to people, every time I see it on a table, whether I've got it on the table and someone coming up to play it, whether it's just someone looking at it, some little kid will walk up to the table and start taking a car and like driving along as if it were diecast because they're just plastic minis. I'm like, yeah, this is what it was supposed to be. We had fundamental rules that we set out to do in our design. We kind of had benchmark rules. Does it still feel like Car Wars? Is it fun? Can people play this? Is it approachable? Anytime I hear about those videos, I should say, it tells me that we met those design goals. It may not be for everybody. I mean, nothing is, but we hit a large audience. We did what we set out to do, and it's a success. I hope it translates over time into a huge financial success, but design wise for me, I consider it a success when I see those videos or hear about them, especially.
Yeah, it's really
some of my
refreshing to
favorite-
hear.
Yeah, some of my favorite comments on it are some of the old schoolers who played the original game, and it's sat for years because we get older, we don't get everything to the table anymore. But that they got this new edition and they got it out, and their kids were interested, and so now they're playing this game with their kids, and they're like, I could never get them to pay attention to the old one because the old one, it was a product of its time. It was chips of cardboard on a paper map. Not exciting when you compare it to today's market of any board games. So just bringing it forward into that is enough to get new eyes on it and get people to give it that chance. Especially for people who have been trying to play it with their son or their daughter or whoever. And having those multi-generational games, we've had a lot of them like report back to some of the forums like, all right, I got this out. We played one game. They're actually asking me if we can play again, unlike a lot of the other games I try to teach them. So I think in a lot of ways that also makes it a success. They're getting that nostalgia, and it's also bringing in new people who are genuinely interested in it.
And I'm hoping that we get a few more people genuinely interested in it from this. I know I am. I have a hint at what I'm getting for my birthday in December, and I'm not supposed to know about it, but it seems like a large box from your company, so I'm excited about that. But I'm excited that you're continuing to develop and grow this, and that there's another Kickstarter. As soon as I finish this interview, I'm going to be jumping on that late Kickstarter, and we'll link to that in the description. But as we're wrapping things up, with your role as someone who plays a lot of these games and demos them and or designs and develops them, if you could both share with me, if you had just a chance to tell somebody, give them the real quick pitch on why they should choose Car Wars to play, Jimmie, how would you start that? And then Randy, I'd like to hear how you would answer that.
So I would say if you like the idea of driving fast and shooting things and whipping around a corner and firing off a missile at somebody, or chasing them down, this is a game for you. It's going to take you about an hour. It's not going to be a huge time investment. You'll have to learn a little, but you get to customize everything as you go into it. The more you play it, the more you're going to like, man, last time Chuck, he caught me with those flamethrowers. I'm putting a automatic fire suppression system in the car this time, and I'm bringing those buzzsaws and going to tear his bumper off next time. Like if that sounds like fun dynamic for your table, I think this is the kind of game that you would enjoy.
For this audience, I'll tell you, if you have those post-apocalyptic or Spy Hunter-esque cars that they're sitting there and they seem like they should be moving and doing something. They have weapons on the side. Shouldn't he be fighting instead of parked on the shelf? This is a game. Take a look at it. If you don't like this game, look at Gaslines. Look, find some way to get more enjoyment out of your hobby. Every iota, take that car you built, take that car you've repainted or done something with or collected, found at a garage sale or in the back of something. Take that piece and enjoy it a little more, spend some more time and let your hobby grow. Let it grow into a different thing and see what you think of it.
Hear.
Well said.
Very well said. Well, guys, I could spend a lot more time talking with you, but I want to be respectful of your time, and I appreciate you being here. We'd love to have you back on to talk more about this, because it sounds like I love seeing the traction. I love that there's expansions actively happening with this game. But before we go, let's give the people, one more time where they can find you guys, follow you, where they can get the games, all that good stuff.
Warehouse23.com, stevejacksongames.com. If you're looking for us personally, we're based out of Austin, Texas, and we go to a lot of conventions. We go to Gen Con in Indianapolis in the summer. We'll be at PAX Unplugged in Philadelphia coming up here in the start of December. Stop by and say hi. If you ever see us in an event, come and say hi. Say, hey, I saw you on Diecast Breakdown. I want to talk to you about this. If I have time, I'll talk to you. Sometimes I don't have time, but if I've got time, I'll talk to you.
And if you just want to see more of this stuff in play, we've got our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Steve Jackson Games, and we archive that over onto YouTube, which is YouTube/Steve Jackson Games. All our stuff's archived there. So you want to go through and find some of the old Car Wars videos or the most recent ones and watch through and see how this actually plays out. See if it's your thing. Go ahead and look us up there. Take some time, watch those videos, and then follow the links to our site, our store, all that sort of stuff.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Jimmie and Randy, so much for being here today. Loved hearing about this. Love hearing more about Steve Jackson Games. So viewers, please go check that out. And again, thank you for being here. And thank you for making it to the end of another episode of Diecast Breakdown. Once more, we want to thank our patrons who make all of this possible. If you want to join their ranks, you can visit diecastbreakdown.com or click the little join button at the bottom of your screen. And as always, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, especially the share. That's the one that really helps grow this channel. And we've been thrilled with the growth that we've seen recently. We're just going, I'm seeing 40% growth week over week on our channel, which is a really exciting thing. So thank you again for those folks who are spreading the good word and keeping this thing going. So as always, we want to thank you for coming along with us for the ride. So until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags.
Thanks for listening to Diecast Breakdown. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and tell a friend to listen in. Find Diecast Breakdown on your favorite social media platforms or visit diecastmedianetwork.com to learn more about this and our other projects. Diecast Breakdown is a presentation of Flying Valiant and the Diecast Media Network.